Welcome and thank you for standing by. Currently, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn the call over to your host for today, Crystal Jimerson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on From Chaos to Coordination, utilizing the Census Bureau's Emergency Management Hub. I'm Crystal Jimerson, a training specialist here at the U.S. Census Bureau. I want to thank you for joining us today for the Topics, Tools, and Data to Use webinar series. These webinars are a great opportunity for you to learn from our experts about how to access the Census Bureau data, tools, and resources. If you wish to follow along, take a moment now to open an additional browser. You can also register for any of the webinars by visiting census.gov/academy. Before I introduce today's speaker, let's go over a few important housekeeping rules. As mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded. For your convenience, it will be uploaded to our Census Academy site with all supplemental materials relating to the webinar within 30 business days. We welcome written questions during the webinar. Please submit your written questions using the Q&A panel, which is at the bottom center or the right side of your WebEx screen. Please take a moment to locate that now. Once you found the Q&A panel, make sure you choose All Panelists from the drop-down menu. This will ensure we see your question. Also, we ask that you do not include any personal or business identifiable information with your questions. We suggest keeping the chat panel open as we will provide key links and other resources throughout the webinar. Keep in mind, you won't be able to respond to the chat. That is for us to send out links and other resources related to the presentation. My colleagues will be monitoring the Q&A panel, and as time allows, we will answer your question directly through the Q&A panel, or we will share your question with the presenter to respond to during the webinar. If we do not get to all the questions with the response during the webinar, we will post the questions and responses with the webinar materials on the census.gov/academy site within 30 business days. As you know, we are in a virtual environment and sometimes technical difficulties might occur. If you are having issues, try a different browser such as Chrome or consider logging out and coming back into the session. If you are having audio issues, try selecting the computer audio or calling into the webinar via phone. Now I would like to introduce our speaker, Kimberly Davis. Thanks again for being here today. Kim, you may begin.
Hi, thanks, Crystal, for the introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and start our presentation today, from chaos to coordination using the Census Bureau Emergency Management Hub. As Crystal mentioned, I'll be your presenter today, and I reside in Denver, Colorado. I've studied project management, and I'm interested in and always training on virtual marketing and information. My primary role as a DDS is to communicate business, demographic, and economic statistics from the Census Bureau. I do this by conducting free presentations, trainings, and workshops, and assisting the public with accessing data or understanding the data products and tools that we have available. I currently serve the states of Colorado, Montana, and Wyoming. And I'd like to also thank today my esteemed colleagues that are also data dissemination specialists. They will be moderating today, and that's Brian Berman, Dave Schuler, and Kira Obradovich. They cover surrounding states that are in the areas that I cover. Additionally, because I tend to look at myself in the camera, I'm going to shut my camera off for the presentation and live examples today. Okay, for the agenda today, we're going to go over emergency management. the Census Bureau's hub, and then we'll do some demonstrations from the Management Hub data tools. So I think we can all agree that during a disaster, things are pretty chaotic, broken, everything seems broken, souls and communities and homes and glass. There's a lot of burnout and physical and emotional struggles, collapse and destruction, and of home and businesses. So, as we know, there's damage and disruption of services, and people are exposed to elements and debris that they wouldn't normally be exposed to. There's a loss of essential needs, often like clean water and power outages, food shortages, and there's that physical threat to human life. And sometimes there's stress and conflict, social conflict when we have disasters. So the general definition, the basic definition of emergency management is the field focused on mitigating, preparing for responding, and to recover from emergencies and disasters. It involves coordinating resources and responsibilities to protect lives and property and to minimize the impact of various hazards, both natural and human-made. The focus of emergency management is about protecting human lives, reducing injury and risk, ensuring the insurance of essential needs, the reduce loss of infrastructure, and being cognizant of cost and the debt that it creates and the possible threat of theft that often occurs when resources are low. And then, of course, the end goal is to restore communities. The process is to gather information and rely on expert knowledge, such as forecasters, emergency managers, safety personnel, and local leaders. And then they determine the process that they need to take, which can include evacuating, gathering goods, preparing backup resources. And of course, all of this needs to be communicated in some way by meetings, news, social media, radio, TV, and then implementing the mitigation plan, the response plan, and the recovery plan. So what do you know about your community when you're conducting emergency management and planning for it? I think most people would agree we need to know the number of people, the number of houses, and details about the economy, the business, and the jobs. But some other things that we may need to understand about the community are details about the people. For example, who lives here and where did they come from? And how long have people lived here? Are they new to the community, or have they been here a long time and well connected? How will there be communication to the population of impact? We often think of social media and mainstream resources, but we also need to consider that not everybody has the opportunity for that. For example, people that may have vision or hearing disabilities that communication needs to be customized for, as well as people that may not speak the same language as we do. We also need to consider how will people continue through the process of the emergency. Do they have the ability to stay warm or cooled in weather disasters? Do they have the ability to evacuate? Do they have the ability to financially recover? Do they have insurance? And really, can they afford this disaster to happen? What does that look like for the people? We also consider the structures of the housing. What type of housing is there? What year was it built? How many rooms are in it? How many people occupy it? And do the residents live alone or know others in the community? Um, how is the home heated? Some are heated by wood fire. Some are by electricity or fuels. And is there running water in the house, or what are the situations for plumbing in the facilities? And then for the economic side of it, we need to understand more about the businesses and jobs. For example, how many establishments would be impacted and what industries could be impacted? How many workers are here? What jobs do they have? What income loss could occur? And where are the workers and where are the jobs? How far are they traveling to get to the jobs, or are they working at home? And how are they getting to the jobs? Do they take public transportation? Are they driving? And what is the opportunity for people to evacuate if they don't have a vehicle or enough vehicles to evacuate the entire household? And how much time does it take these people to get in and out of an area? If there are limited roads or bridges that may impact the evacuation, for the evacuation and for emergency staff to access where disasters occur, we need to understand what does that look like, and will there be traffic jams, or are there multiple routes for people to get out? So how can the Census Bureau help with emergency management? Well, if you didn't know, the Census Bureau does count more than America every 10 years. We actually have a lot of data that we collect for a number of purposes. For example, annually, we do a housing and population estimates release. And then we have very detailed data about social characteristics of people, such as the age and sex of people, the children and elderly, what relationships are going on in the community. Are people single, or are the grandparents? Are people married? And what about the migration? Do people live in an area a long time, or are they new to the community? Can they speak the language that we're speaking if they've come from a different area? Or how familiar are they with our area for emergency planning and emergency processes? Maybe the place of birth or the language spoken at home may impact that. We also may need to consider the level of education for recovery if job loss occurs and we need to replace workers or people don't return. And then are there disabilities like I mentioned before, with vision and hearing and possibly mobility? We also look at, or we have information about the house values, the type of housing, the occupancy and tenure. How many units are in structure? Not all are just a single family household. As we know, there are many apartments and condominium complexes. What year was it built? That may give us some indicators about how the house would sustain through an emergency, and what's going on with the house's operations as far as utilities, heating, cooling, and plumbing. And when did the people move into a unit, and the number of vehicles that they have? We have information about the number of vehicles and people living alone, the elderly alone, and if they have computer or internet use and telephone service availability. On the economic side, we have business and non-employer data. We have information about the types of industries and what they are, the business characteristics. We have employment status. We have the types of occupations, the commuting to work, income and benefits, and health insurance coverage. So all of these can help with the emergency planning to understand who our community is. So the Census Bureau has developed the Emergency Management Hub, and the Emergency Management Hub is produced in a single platform page that shares timely local data that are critical to emergency management, such as planning, preparedness, and recovery. The contributing resources that we have for the Census Bureau Emergency Management Hub are data from American Community Survey, the Community Resilience Estimates, county business patterns, and non-employer statistics. Other contributing resources are cited on the Census Bureau Emergency Management Hub that are related to emergency management with the links directly to these resources. They include the American Red Cross. I think everyone's quite familiar with the work that they have done. The Department of Commerce also has, in addition to the Census Bureau, NOAA's National Weather Service and weather forecast offices, the National Hurricane Center, and the National Weather Service. Health and Human Services contributes data from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Department of Homeland Security has disaster assistance, Federal Emergency Management Agency, ready.gov, and the Department of Labor provides information from the Occupational Safety and Health Administration Hurricane Preparedness Center. So when you're on the Emergency Management Hub, there are a number of ways you can navigate the site, but I wanted to point out that the data is available and searchable by events. You can view emergency by the type of events, related sites and resources, the data tools that are available, America Counts stories, contributing surveys and programs that we discussed, news, and some visualizations. So we'll go down the list of each of those items and talk about what they provide for the hub. So the recent events hub, topic provides data about recent disasters and the events of the detail. It gives it in a format that's easy to read and understand about what's happened. And it does also cite the resources that connect the article to the recent events. You can search as well by the event types, such as wildfires, air quality, hurricanes, extreme heat, tornadoes, floods, pandemics, and other events. And as you can see here, other events may include bridge collapsings. So in the events type, when you select an event type, and this one is showing wildfires here, it gives you information about the most recent wildfires that we have available, and the title of it, along with quick details about each of the wildfires that are in here. When you click on each of those articles, it gives you details about the actual events, and in this example, it shares the details from the January 7th about the tragic fires sweeping across California. That it also continues to share that it burned a total of 78,000 acres, destroying more than 12,000 structures and prompted evacuation orders and warnings for as many as 200,000 residents. Further down the page, it continues to add the national news articles and any relevant data tools that you can find information about the event. Next are the America Counts stories. These are a wonderful collection of articles published by the Census Bureau. They highlight stories behind the numbers in and their data. These articles cover a wide range of topics, including families, households, employment, business, education, and economy. We have a selection of them lined up with the Emergency Management Hub, and they aim to make the census data more accessible and engaging by presenting it in a narrative format. Next, we have the news and the blogs. The emergency management news section and blogs share the details about data releases that show impacts of and for disasters. Next, we have these visualizations, and I really love the visualizations myself because it tells the story of an emergency that has occurred, an event that has occurred, and it gives the details of what may have happened or impacted the economy or the people. This example here on the left is talking about the top annual imports in 2023 through the imports in the path of Hurricane Debbie. So these ports were impacted, and it shows what industries and the impact that it would have on each of these individual. Next, we have the on the right side, we have the interactive visualizations, and this is another way that we have visualization displayed at the Census Bureau. These are interactive, and the interactive visualizations allow users to customize fields to look at their particular region. This one is sharing community resilience estimates by county rankings. It is available at the national level, and then you can, of course, customize it to your state and get the details for each of the counties in your state. So now we'll jump into the data tools. On the hub, we connect users directly to the data tools that are available on the Census Bureau's website. We have the My Community Explorer, on the map for emergency management. A couple of them, the Census Business Builder Regional Analyst and Census Business Builder Report Quick Lookup, are connected. And then we last have the Community Resilience Estimate tool. Today we won't be able to go through all of these tools, but we will go through the My Community Explorer, which is a map-based dashboard that provides selected demographic, business, and resilience information to help users identify areas in their states, counties, and communities. Next, we'll go through On the Map for emergency management. This is a public data tool that provides an intuitive web-based interface for accessing the population and workforce statistics for areas being affected in real-time disasters. And the third one we'll go through is the Community Resilience Estimates. This provides an easily understood metric for how socially vulnerable every neighborhood in the United States is, to the impact of disasters. So the difference would be that this is preparing for those potential vulnerable communities, and then it contains data that you can search down to low geographies. You can, of course, get the nation, and then you can get the states, the counties, and the tracts, which are neighborhood levels that reside within or are encompassed in counties. So very low geography that we can look at for those. Okay, so we will go into a live demo now. So let me switch screens here, and we will look at some of these data tools live. All right, so let me get this out of the way, and we'll start here on the emergency management homepage. And this is, if you click on it, this is the landing page of where you begin. So we'll scroll down the items we've already talked about, and we'll go into My Community Explorer. It's when you click on the item and highlight it in the screen above, you can go to the View More section of the tool, and it lands you on the tool itself, the My Community Explorer tool. Okay, so the landing page of My Community Explorer has a tutorial that it opens up on. So it has the ability for users to go step by step through the tool itself, and it'll guide you through My Community Explorer by using this pop-up. So we're not going to use that today. I'm gonna close that out. But I want to talk a little bit about what happens and how to navigate this a little bit. So on the left panel here of My Community Explorer, it starts with the directions, then the legend. It gives the legend over here. Let me see if I can get it up. Navigate it here. So here are the steps, and then here is the legend about what you'll find in My Community Explorer. And this tool, or I'm sorry, this tool it ranks the ability for the population in components of 3. So the social vulnerability with 3 or more components, 1 to 2 components, or those communities with 0 components of social vulnerability. And then further down, we have a legend that identifies what you're seeing on the map with the different icons and the colors of the map, because it is an interactive map, as you can see, with the action items and this customized search navigation. So for this example, we'll just start here with the selection of a state, and it gives you the drop down with the alphabetical list of the states. And I'm going to select today Montana. And so the map automatically scrolls into the state of Montana. And it gives us information then on the right panel about the region that we've selected. So here we have the state of Montana, and then it gives us information about Montana has 56 counties, and it gives us the total number of household, the population, and the population with 3 or more components of vulnerability, which is at 19.5% statewide. The components that may add this up are all included in the tool itself as well. So it would include people that are below poverty level, people with disabilities, without vehicles, without broadband access. And let me get this scrolled down a little bit more. Whoops. There we go. And then it gives the details of each of those numbers here. We can also, within Montana, select a specific county, and we can do that by using step 2 here in the yellow on the right. And once you click that, it gives alphabetical list of all of the counties within Montana, and then you can make your selection from here. You also have the option for this tool to interact live on the map. So I'm going to go ahead and click this purple area here, this kind of reddish color, which is Liberty County. And it gives me what it brings back on the return are the details about Liberty County. And so if I scroll down on this pop-up, it will tell me, let me get those, there we go. It'll give details about that you can click on Census Business Builder or view the detailed report from there. You also can see in Liberty County the scores for the resilience. And so it gives the details about what is causing the ranking for this particular county. Whoops, let me get it here. So this one is telling us that there are 39.96%, so almost 40% of the residents in Liberty County rank with a 3+ in vulnerability. So we have a high population that are vulnerable up in Liberty County. And then it goes on to tell us in here what is causing that or how what's driving those numbers. So we can see that it doesn't have to do with it looks like it's pretty low for ethnicity, Hispanic or Latino populations, as well as people by race. We have the race data in here as well. And then we can also see information about the population that is male or female, and the population that's 18 years or over from the civil service, so the veterans, and it doesn't seem to have a statistical difference for that population. And then the Gini index of income inequality is very high in this particular county. So that means there's a large gap between the higher earners versus the lower earners. There's quite a large gap that's driving that number. We also can look in this detail about the people living in the rural areas, and that would obviously impact how accessible it is to get to them during an emergency, or for them to maybe get out of an emergency area. The median age of the population also impacts this, because we need to think about those children and the older populations. There's a high population of 65 years and over in this particular county. So what would it take to serve this county with the elderly population? And then the people with a disability is also higher. Populations with below the poverty level is high. And then whoops. And then the populations with English speaking. This one has a lot of English speaking, so that doesn't appear to be impacting it. The education level is lower on the impact, and the occupied housing units how many occupants is lower. So that is not impacting this high number in here. So what this can tell you is how can you serve the community based on the statistical differences for each of the subject lines that are available. You can also scroll in on the map to get lower level geography, which would give you the track level. And this particular county, I don't believe has many tracks, but when a county is divided by tracks that nest within it, you can get that neighborhood data. And so it goes into those same details about the neighborhood level, and it identifies it here on the map. So this is a very useful tool when you're looking at the impact and how you may be able to respond to the population of an area. For the social factors. And we also have the county economic profiles that give us details about what's happening economically in the area. The social characteristics, and usually this auto-populates. Let me see if it's coming up on another screen here. Let's go in here to this county, to Sweetgrass, Montana, and see if we can get it to give us more details about some of these other characteristics. Nope. Normally, though, it does pop up with information about each of the categories here below. And so you also have the race and ethnicity and the business profiles. So we'll move on now to the next data tool. And the next data tool that we're going to look at is on the map for emergency management. And the on the map for emergency management, as I mentioned before, gives us data about the people and the workforce in real time to the disaster. So when we look at this data product, get back over here to a live screen, we can see, let me see. Okay, so on the map for emergency management. So this is the landing page for on the map for emergency management. And it starts out sharing that it's part of the LEHD collection. It has the interfacing map in the center where you can scroll in and out and interact on the map. And on the left, it gives you the events that have occurred, and they are listed with the most current event at the top. And then it alerts you that as of today, August 14th, these are the emergencies that are ongoing. The emergencies come into us from FEMA, and they're loaded into this interface within 4 hours of FEMA declaring a disaster. So on the right side, you can see that there's a legend for the identifiers on the map, each of the icons on the map, and what's happening in the United States currently. So we'll go ahead on this one. And for this example, I'm going to actually type in a disaster relief number, because I had a professor call me from the Community College of Hutchinson, Kansas, that wanted to know what data he could get from this tool for his community once a disaster was declared from an article that he read. So what I can do here is in the search, I can type in the disaster number, And this particular disaster number is DR-4883. And it let's say here in the drop down, so I can click on this disaster. And it brings me right to the disaster areas, and it identifies the entire area for this disaster. So, and it shows here on the map these locations. But what he was interested in was Hutchinson, the town that he is in, the impact that it had just on Hutchinson. So not the entire disaster area, but a lower level area. So you can go ahead and scroll through the entire disaster area by looking at the topics on the left, listing what does this community look like for the entire disaster area. And we have subjects like the race, and then we have the ethnicity. Possibly there may be language barriers by the ability to speak English in this area. We also have poverty status, disability status by age, so we know how to serve those with a disability for the area. The ratio of income to poverty level is also listed in here. And then we have the population 65 and over that are living alone. So this is showing us very detailed data, not just about age, but those that are living alone. And we may have challenges reaching people if they don't have the mainstream communications that we expect everyone to have. And we'll need to know how many of them there are and how to get in touch with them. It shares also the aggregated value of the owner and the occupied housing, and how is the home heated, you know, because it may impact in fires or windstorms or anything that takes out power outages. How are people heating their home in this area, and what are the risks based on that usage? And we also have the mobile homes listed, and then what vehicles are available for the people. Anytime you select a subject for that area, it does change the data on the graph that you see right here to reflect what you're seeing in that area. So if I want to look at those with no vehicle, I can click on the line item for this subject, and it gives me the graph sharing what does that look like for each of those. So this is the persons with no vehicle, and it then compares it to the next slide item. So we can see what the ranking is. And so this area has primarily persons with one vehicle or two vehicles. So it looks like there's an opportunity for people to move from the emergency area. If the population in the housing isn't over one or two persons, or the number that can fit in the vehicle that's at each household. And it continues on to each of those vehicle numbers. So as I mentioned, this is sharing with us the whole disaster area. And he was interested just in Hutchinson. And so you can click here on the event area, and it's telling us the entire event area, but I can also click on Hutchinson, Kansas, and look for the information for just Hutchinson, Kansas. Let me close this and I'm going to just put Hutchinson, Kansas in here, because this, as you can see, is including all of Reno County. Whoops, let me get the spelling on this correct. And then I'll just hit enter. Okay, let's see if it comes up here. Nope. Well, of course it did when I was giving it a trial run. But this does give you the ability to search in a number of ways. So you can put a geography in and you can see anything that was affected with the name Hutchinson in here. It also gives you the ability to search by the DR number or a community in the disaster. So I'm going to close out of the search here, and we'll go ahead and look at this federal disaster here that's in North Dakota. And so what it's sharing with us in this disaster are the number of people that were affected and the counties that were affected for this emergency. And so it gives us also the you can change from the characteristics that we were looking at to all the geographies that were impacted by the disaster. So you can see here all of the counties that were impacted by this particular disaster. And then you can also look at the origin and destination of people in the disaster. And let me get with the variable of all workers, and we're going to select all workers on that variable. So now we can see that all the workers in the area and the impact that it has based on the place level here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this. Another way that you can search is not just by the disaster geography, but navigating on the map itself. So here you can navigate around and look, and I'm going to close this legend and click on each of the disasters, and it will cover the area for a disaster or what that disaster looks like. So let me click on this one. So here's a fire that's affected in this area. And we can see that there isn't a population, but by clicking on this area, we can see that the pandemic did cause it to surface as a disaster relief area with FEMA, and it gives you the details about that. So there's several ways to navigate in on the map to search for disasters, and it does cover the entire area for that when you view it on the map. This tool also has the ability to upload and extract data from an event. So let me we'll grab this pandemic, which is going to be quite large, but you can export the data for this disaster area for the state of Colorado, and you also can share the information with this link. All right, and the last tool that we're going to look at quickly is the Community Resilience Estimator Viewer. And this one is a very simple tool. It gives on the left information about where the data comes from, and it cites the American Community Survey. And the legend then explains the percentage of the population with 3 or more components of vulnerability in here. So it defaults on the 0 components at the national level. I'm sorry, it defaults on the 3 or more components. And then this is what it looks like with the 0 or more components. And then scrolling down on the legend, we can see what those mean. So this is sharing the population with 0 components of social vulnerability in the coloration being darker with those at a higher number. And then we have the middle ground at 1 to 2 components. And then where we were at the 0 on the landing page, or I'm sorry, the 0 where we just looked at, and then here are the 3 or more that it landed on. So this tool allows you to navigate also on the map and scrolling in to the map to get specific counties. You can click on the the specific areas in here to get those ranking as well, and the resiliency for the areas. So by clicking on it, it gives you the details, but you can scroll even smaller into the map. So looking at the state of Colorado, we can see, let me get this one out of here, all the counties for Colorado, and then we can select any of the counties in here. And it looks like there aren't a lot of resilient issues in the El Paso County area where Colorado Springs is. But if I click on this and scroll into El Paso County, I can get the details of the entire county, or scrolling in, I can get details. I'm sorry, I keep clicking on it, of each of the track level data. So this really gives us the ability to look at the resilience of an area. And although it didn't look like El Paso County would struggle with resilience, when you get down to the neighborhood level, you can see actually the pockets that are going to have 3 or more components, 1 to 2 or less than or have 0 components. So if we scroll into some of these, we can look and see what each of those track levels looks like, and how we can serve them based on those components and the number of people in that. So this one's an easy to use, quick overview of how you can serve to prevent and prepare with the ability for a community to withstand, and what their resiliency would be. All right, so let me stop sharing this and we'll go back to our slides, and let me get past each of those. I want to share with you today, this webinar was brought to you by the Data Dissemination and Training Branches Census Academy, which offers a variety of learning options such as today's webinar and previously recorded webinars. It also has data gems and the ability for users to request customized trainings from any of the data dissemination specialists like myself and my colleagues operating the moderation today. You can click on the Census Academy to get details about and request the links for sharing or accessing the request form. All right. You can get in touch with us by clicking on this QR code. And if I can get rid of this thing here, here is my information to reach out to me. You can also contact us at census.askdata@census.gov, or by calling 1-844-ASK-DATA. And that is all I have to share with you today. Do we have any questions? Kira?
Hi, Kim. Yes, great job. We had several questions, one of which I found to be particularly interesting, and that is while we do know that FEMA takes about 3 days to declare an emergency, how long does it take then for that information to be integrated into our data tools?
For the data tools, it takes about 4 hours once we receive the information from FEMA.
Great. And then we did have a question. You talked earlier, about all of the different things that impact community resilience. And I was just wondering, we were wondering how the Census Bureau defines poverty.
Okay, so poverty is a little complex, but I do want to explain that it is a national number. The definition for poverty, it is not customized geographically. But we use a set of money income thresholds that vary by family size and composition to determine who's in poverty. So the family's total income is less than the family threshold, then the family and every individual in it is considered in poverty.
Great, that was all.
All right. Well, thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Crystal.
Great. Hello. Thank you, Kim. Thank you for this wonderful emergency preparedness presentation and our data tool walkthrough. Before we conclude, I'd like to thank everyone who played a role in today's webinar. We thank our audience for spending your time with us this afternoon. We are very interested in hearing from you on how we are doing. So please take a moment to fill out the evaluation that will appear when you exit the webinar. That brings us to a close. And again, we thank you for joining us today and hope you have a great afternoon.